Can anyone tell me the answer to the following question? When was the last time the so-called international law actually stopped a war? Not slowed it down, not condemned it after the fact, actually stopped it. I will wait. The truth is, we've been living in a fantasy. For maybe 20, 30 years after the Cold War ended, we convinced ourselves that the world has changed, that international law mattered, that the UN meant something, that we'd evolved past conquest and power politics. But we were wrong. And now we are paying for the delusion. Shalom, I'm Igal, your host, and this is Middle East in less than 5 minutes. Let's dive in. The United Nations, captured since the 1960s. Let's start with the UN, because everyone still pretends it's some neutral arbiter in global justice. It is not. It hasn't been for at least 60 years. The Soviet Union figured something out in the mid-60s. They could not beat the Western military. They couldn't beat it economically, but they could hijack the international institutions. How? Build a coalition. Muslim countries, non-democracies, democracies that hate the West anyway. Get them all voting together as a bloc. And suddenly you control the General Assembly. You control the narrative. You control what gets called the international law. That's why the UN has passed more resolutions condemning Israel than any other country combined. Not because Israel is uniquely evil, because the Soviet Muslim bloc made Israel the punching bag and nobody stopped them. The USSR is gone, but the coalition isn't. Russia inherited it. China joined it. And now the UN is a joke that condemns democracies while giving dictatorships a pass. When Assad gassed his own people, the UN did nothing. When China put 1 million Uyghurs in camps, the UN did nothing. When Russia invaded Ukraine, the UN did nothing. But Israel builds an apartment in Jerusalem? Wow, emergency session. So much for international law. It's just theater. Russia play, USSR 2.0. It looks like Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. Look at the pattern. Georgia in 2008, Ukraine in 2014, then the full invasion in 2022, troops in Moldova's Transnistria, threats against the Baltic states, treating Armenia like a vassal, pressuring the Central Asian republics. This is systematic, not random behavior. Putin is trying to reassemble the old Soviet empire, one piece at a time. But here's the problem. He's destroying Russia to do it. He's spending billions on the Ukraine war, draining his male population. Russia is heading towards the same demographic catastrophe they had after World War II, when they lost an entire generation of men. The economy is being crushed by sanctions. The best and brightest are fleeing. The population is collapsing. Putin is chasing the ghost of Soviet power while gutting his country that's supposed to become that power. In 20 years, Russia probably won't be a superpower. It will be a gas station with nukes slowly bleeding out. But Putin doesn't care about 20 years from now. He cares about his legacy. He wants to be the man who made Russia great again, even if it means sacrificing Russia's future to do it. So yes, it looks like he's trying to rebuild the USSR. He's just killing Russia in the process. The 30-year fantasy. After the Cold War ended, something strange happened. We started believing our own propaganda. We told ourselves that history was over, that democracy had won, that from now on, global politics would be governed by international law, human rights, and institutions like the UN and the International Criminal Court. For maybe 30 years, it almost looked true. Wars got smaller. Trade got bigger. Countries talked about norms and rule-based orders. But here's the thing, that only worked because America enforced it. The so-called international law everybody talked about. It was American power with a nice label. Countries followed the rules because America made them, and when America decided not to enforce the rules anymore, the whole system collapsed. Back to kings and conquest. If you look at the history, the period from 1945 to around 2003 was the anomaly, the weird blip, the exception. For all the human history, global politics worked one way. Kings protect their lands. When they're strong, they grab more. When they're weak, they lose what they have. That's it. That's the game. The Persians did it, the Romans did it, the Mongols did it, the Ottomans did it, the British did it. There was never some magical moment when humanity evolved past conquest. We just had one power, so dominant that it could impose a temporary order. And now that power is either unwilling or unable to keep doing it. So we are back to the old game. Russia grabs Ukraine because it can, and nobody stops it. China eyes Taiwan because it wants it, and international law won't save it. Iran funds proxies across the Middle East because that's how you expand influence when you can't invite directly. Trump floats taking Greenland and absorbing Venezuela because strategic territory matters again. The rule-based order didn't end because bad guys broke it. It ended because it was never real in the first place. It was just American hegemony with better PR. The new power blocks. Right now, there are 4 players that matter. The US, China, Russia, and the Muslim bloc. Everyone else is picking sides or getting crushed. The US is still the strongest, but it's tired. Tired of being world police, tired of spending blood and treasure to enforce rules that everyone else ignores. Tired of being called imperialist for doing what everyone begged them to do for 70 years. China is rising, but it's fragile. Demographic collapse, real estate bubble, an economy built on debt and exports. It's trying to grab as much as it can before the whole thing comes crashing down. Russia is declining, but dangerous. A declining power is more reckless than a rising one. It has nothing to lose, so it takes risks that rational actors wouldn't. And the Muslim bloc? It's not a unified empire. It's a coalition of countries that agree on one thing, opposing the West. Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, Pakistan, Qatar, they all hate each other. But they'll work together when it's convenient, and they've learned how to use international institutions to punch above their weight. These 4 blocs are playing the old game, grabbing power where they can, protecting what they have, and they've stopped pretending that international law matters. Europe, the toothless barker. And then there's Europe. Europe spent the last 30 years convincing itself that it had transcended power politics, that it was too enlightened for armies and borders, that soft power and diplomacy were all you needed. They gutted their defense budgets. Why spend on tanks when you can spend on healthcare? Why maintain a military when America will protect you for free? And they opened their borders. Mass immigration from people who hate the West, hate liberal democracy, hate everything Europe claims to stand for. But that's fine. Diversity is strength. Integration will happen. Any day now. Except it didn't. And now Europe is paying the price. Russia invades Ukraine and Europe can't do anything about it. They don't have the military. They don't have the will. They can barely keep the lights on because they made themselves dependent on Russian gas. They bark. They condemn. They pass sanctions. But Russia doesn't care, because Europe is toothless. China threatens Taiwan and Europe shrugs. The Middle East explodes, and Europe wrings its hands. Migrants pour across the Mediterranean, and Europe can't even control its own borders. This is what happens when you disarm and then act surprised when armed players don't respect you. Europe thought it was building utopia. It built a civilization that cannot defend itself. And now it's discovering that when the wolves came back, barking doesn't help. What this means going forward. So where does this leave us? We're back in a world where power matters more than law, where military strength matters more than moral argument, where the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. Call it cynicism if you want, but it's reality. It's always been reality. We just forgot for a minute. The question is, what do we do about it? Option 1, America reasserts dominance, rebuilds the military, enforces the rules, becomes world police again. But that requires a willingness to sacrifice that I'm not sure exists anymore. Americans are tired, and honestly, can you blame them? But tired is one thing. What's worse is the anti-American sentiment inside America itself. You've got Marxists who hate the West, who are ashamed of everything we've built, everything we have. These people won't protect anything because they think there's nothing worth protecting. They've been taught that America is a villain, the Western civilization is oppression. Good luck defending a country when a chunk of your population is rooting for its collapse. Option 2, accept multipolarity. Let the regions sort themselves out. China runs Asia, Russia runs Eastern Europe, the US runs the Western Hemisphere, and we all agree not to blow each other up. The problem? Multipolar systems are unstable. They tend to end in world wars. Option 3, collapse. The international system breaks down entirely. Trade routes get disturbed, alliances dissolve, regional wars spread. And we slide into chaos until someone powerful enough imposes a new order. I don't know which one we are heading toward, maybe a mix of all three. But I do know this, pretending that international law still matters is delusional. Pretending that institutions like the UN have legitimacy is a lie. And pretending that we are not back to kings and conquest is dangerous. So, for almost 60 years we lived in a fantasy, a world where you could sign treaties and expect countries to follow them, where international courts could hold powerful nations accountable, where the arc of history bent toward justice. That world is gone. Maybe it was never really here. Now we are back to the world that's always existed, the world where power is the only currency that matters, where conquest is limited only by the ability to conquer, where survival depends on strength, not morality. That's uncomfortable. It violates everything we've been taught to believe. But uncomfortable truths are still truths. The sooner we accept that, the sooner we can start dealing with the world as it actually is. Not the world we wish existed, not the world we were promised, the world where kings still rule and conquest never ended. I'm Igal, and this was Middle East in less than 5 minutes. Until next time, Shalom.